A black Suburban, pulled over in the middle of a quiet road. No violation, no broken law, just one reason: a black man behind the wheel, and a military safe in the back seat. The cop stepped up, knocked on the window. Cold voice. "Open the safe." "No, it's personal. Family keepsakes." He smirked, grabbed a crowbar, jammed it into the lock, and then, boom, neon green paint exploded all over him, mid-livestream, in front of thousands watching. Only then did he realize the man he tried to humiliate was a retired U.S. Marine Major General. Calm, composed, unshakable. What state are you watching from? Could this happen where you live? Welcome to Mr. 7 Stories. If you believe in justice and power turned on its head, like, subscribe, and stay with us. Let's dive into today's story. Morning light had just begun to spill over the pines of Millstone Valley, casting pale orange streaks across the still warm asphalt, kissed by the last breath of night mist. From a distance, a black Chevy Suburban rolled quietly through the countryside, its tires whispering against the smooth road, engine purring like the steady breath of a man long disciplined by duty. Garrett Langford, 54, sat behind the wheel. A Weather Marine Corps watch clung to his wrist. His eyes were steady, fixed on the road ahead. He had once been a major general, a soldier in every sense. Now retired. No uniform, no ceremony, just a man driving alone through the Georgia dawn, toward a place no one was waiting, but he felt compelled to reach. In the back seat sat a single item, a heavy steel safe, VaultGuard Series 5, strapped in tight like it was the last passenger in Garrett's life. No cash inside, no weapons, no national secrets, only something far more valuable: military records, medals awarded by the president, letters from his late wife, and childhood photos of his daughter. Memories, locked away with a triple code entry and an advanced security system. No one knew that but him, and he intended to keep it that way. Inside the safe, Garrett had added a custom feature, perhaps unnecessary, but he called it old soldier's instinct. If anyone tried to force it open, it would release a burst of indelible green security dye, marking the violator instantly. Not for revenge, but as a warning. There are lines you do not cross. That morning, Garrett had no fixed destination. He just needed to drive. Sometimes, the silence of an empty road is the only thing keeping a person from falling apart. As he passed through the hills of Raventon Springs, golden fields stretched out on both sides. Garrett squinted into the rearview mirror as sunlight flashed across it. A beautiful morning, until it wasn't. From behind him, red and blue lights. A siren. Sharp. Unprovoked. Garrett blinked, checked the speedometer. 45 miles an hour. Exactly the limit. He was in the proper lane. No broken taillight. Still, the patrol car moved in closer. He sighed, not out of fear, but because he knew this feeling. That specific, bitter tension known all too well by black men who've served this country. Sometimes, the uniform can't save you. Even if you once carried a battalion. Here, on a quiet Georgia road, it's just you, and the look of suspicion staring from behind a patrol windshield. Garrett flicked on his turn signal and eased onto the shoulder. Gravel crackled beneath his tires. He turned off the engine, hands remaining in plain view on the steering wheel. No music, no engine hum, just silence, and something uneasy approaching. He sat still behind the wheel, hands clearly visible atop the wood grain. Exactly what he used to teach the young men under his command. Stay calm. Don't move. Don't argue. Don't give them an excuse. But deep inside, he could feel the tension creeping in. Slow, cold, like a bead of sweat trailing down the back of his neck on what should have been a peaceful morning. The patrol car door opened. Out stepped a man about 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, clean-cut, eyes sharp as blades. His Raventon Springs PD uniform stretched tightly across his chest. The name tag read, Officer Brent Halvorsen, 38, white. His eyes said more than words ever could. No goodwill, no trust, no need for a reason. Garrett glanced into the rearview mirror, just long enough to memorize that face. Men like Halvorsen weren't new to him. Young guys in uniform who thought the badge gave them the right to judge. Halvorsen walked slowly up to the window. He tapped 3 times on the glass, and before Garrett could fully lower it, he spoke. Out early this morning. Where you headed? The voice wasn't friendly. Not a greeting. Just a clipped interrogation. Sharp, suspicious. Garrett rolled the window down just enough to speak. His voice was calm and even. Just out for a drive. All my paperwork's in order. Is there a violation, officer? Halvorsen smirked. His eyes flicked to the back seat. To the VaultGuard Series 5, still strapped in tight, still silent as ever. Safe, huh? Carrying the whole world with you. Garrett didn't respond right away. He looked the officer directly in the eye. Didn't lower his head. Didn't provoke. It's personal. Halvorsen raised an eyebrow. That's odd. Never seen anyone haul around a safe in the back seat. You got anything you need to disclose? The air between them thickened. Garrett knew this kind of moment. He'd lived long enough. Survived enough battlefields. He could tell when someone wasn't after the truth. Just looking for a reason. I wasn't aware transporting a safe was against the law, officer. And if there's no violation, I'd like to be on my way. Halvorsen gave a dry laugh. Not amused. The kind of laugh someone lets out before things get unnecessarily physical. You know, I have the authority to search this vehicle if I sense anything suspicious. And have you seen anything suspicious? Or is it just a feeling? Silence. A light breeze moved through the roadside trees. The tiny American flag on Halvorsen's uniform fluttered slightly. Garrett kept his gaze steady, but he could see it, that flicker in the officer's eyes. The urge to assert control, especially over a black man. Older, composed, who didn't flinch. This time, it wasn't about the uniform. It was about the color of skin. And a steel safe no one was allowed to touch. What's inside the safe? The question came out like a jab, sudden, aggressive. Officer Brent Halvorsen stepped back slightly, trying to get a clearer view through the window. His hand rested on his hip, thumb hovering near his holster. It sounded casual, but Garrett heard the real tone behind it. Not curiosity, suspicion, not a question, a bait. Garrett tilted his head slightly. His eyes never wavered. Personal documents, family mementos, nothing illegal. Halvorsen folded his arms, eyes locked on that gray steel box in the back. The daylight filtered through the window, bouncing off the metal surface, making it look even more mysterious. And for someone like Halvorsen, curious, arrogant, quick-tempered, it was a temptation too hard to resist. Open it. Let me see what's inside. Garrett pressed his lips together. Not surprised, just disappointed. He'd seen this coming. Once again, the calm appearance of a black man was seen as something to be suspicious of. Once again, integrity was treated as concealment, simply because it didn't fit the narrative of the man in uniform. I'm sorry, officer, Garrett said, voice steady. I'm not required to open it. You have no legal basis to demand it, and I do not consent. No shouting, no resistance, just words, firm, measured, heavy as stone. But to Halvorsen, it was defiance, a challenge. You're making this harder than it has to be, Mr. Langford, he growled, eyes narrowing. A man driving around rural Georgia with a triple-lock safe either has something to hide or something wrong with him. Garrett didn't move. Or maybe he's someone who once protected this country and understands the value of what belongs to him. I know my rights, officer, and I've broken no law. The silence stretched. Halvorsen, now agitated, stepped to the passenger side, trying to peer into the edges of the safe, as if his stare could penetrate steel. Unable to help himself, he muttered again. Does it have something in it? Something dangerous? Garrett raised one corner of his mouth. Not a smile, a quiet warning. Only dangerous to me, but I strongly suggest you don't try to open it. Halvorsen let out a laugh, a mocking, goading kind of laugh. What? Is that a threat? No, Garrett replied, voice calm as ever. I'm trying to help you avoid a mistake, the kind that doesn't wash off. Literally. Halvorsen didn't grasp the meaning, but that only made him more defiant. He turned back toward his cruiser, barking over his shoulder. Fine. If you won't cooperate, I'll make sure that safe's not a threat. I'm done playing this little civil rights game. Garrett closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them, staring toward the Suburban. The last time someone ignored a warning and touched a landmine, it didn't end well. And this time, it was a VaultGuard Series 5. Sitting in his car, Garrett needed no weapon. He just had to stay still, because the other man was about to mark himself with something permanent, and he'd been warned. Brent Halvorsen opened the trunk of his cruiser with theatrical flair. He pulled out a heavy crowbar, a tool most officers used only under warrant, not to pry open the property of a retired general. In broad daylight, on Highway 62, Garrett Langford stepped out of the car. The door shut with a firm thunk. Morning sunlight hit the shoulder of his olive jacket, casting a quiet silhouette of the leader he once was. No threat, no aggression, only calm authority. "Officer Halvorsen," Garrett said, voice low and firm, "you're crossing both legal and moral lines. Forcing open personal property without a warrant is a serious violation." Halvorsen planted the crowbar against the ground, smirking. "I call this protecting the community. I call it willful abuse of authority." A light breeze drifted through the roadside trees, carrying a tension that couldn't quite be named. And then something new appeared, something that shifted the moment. A drone, small, silver-white, civilian model. It floated silently overhead. Garrett looked up, eyes sharp as radar. He didn't own it, but he knew that flight pattern. Slow, steady, fixed-angle aerial tracking. Halvorsen looked up reflexively and frowned. "Who's flying a drone out here?" Garrett spoke softly. "Could be someone from the farm over the hill. Or maybe someone who thinks this moment deserves to be recorded." Halvorsen shrugged, pretending not to care. He turned back and raised a crowbar. "I'm done with your word games, old man. This is your final warning, officer. That safe has a built-in security system. If you breach it, the consequences are yours alone." Halvorsen chuckled and swung the crowbar like he was warming up for a strongman contest at a county fair. "Oh, I love surprises." Without hesitation, he jammed the crowbar into the edge of the VaultGuard Series 5. The sound of steel scraping steel cut the air. A sharp, chilling screech. Click. The secondary lock popped. Then, a soft hiss. Garrett took one calm step back. The sun hit the pavement. The trees went still. And in that frozen instant, a stream of neon green paint exploded outward like a chemical booby trap. Whoosh! Halvorsen's entire upper body was instantly coated. Bright green, thick and sticky. From forehead to chin, shoulder to chest, arms to gloves. He stumbled back, reeling like he'd been hit. What the hell? The paint splattered onto the ground, streaking the side of the patrol car. Garrett stood motionless, hands in his jacket pockets, gaze ice cold. It's an intrusion ID system, the kind used in military vaults, secure banks, and in this case, a legally protected personal safe. Halvorsen's eyes bulged as he realized. The paint wouldn't come off. He wiped at his face, but the more he wiped, the more it spread. Now he looked like a human traffic light. "You'll regret this," he barked, trying to sound threatening. But he looked like something out of a slapstick movie. Garrett calmly pulled out his phone, raised it deliberately. The dashcam's been recording since the start. And I guess that drone isn't here for fun. Halvorsen swallowed hard. His green-streaked eyes lost their swagger. A soldier can survive the battlefield, but a man like Brent Halvorsen wouldn't survive going viral as the punchline in a small-town scandal. And the show wasn't over. Anyone driving past that stretch of Highway 62 in that exact moment might have thought they'd stumbled into a slapstick comedy scene, with Brent Halvorsen, officer of Ravenun Springs, now looking like a malfunctioning traffic light. His entire body was drenched in blinding neon green, glowing like melted candy. Halvorsen screamed, like someone had dumped boiling water on him. What the hell is happening? He jumped, flailing his arms, trying to wipe the paint from his eyes. But the more he rubbed, the more it spread, like a leaking ink cartridge gone rogue. Paint dripped down his boots, smeared across the shoulder of the road, leaving a sloppy trail like the footprints of a failed circus clown. Garrett Langford stood calmly next to his black Chevy Suburban, arms folded across his chest. The wind tugged gently at his olive jacket like it approved. He didn't look smug, but if you were paying close attention, there was the faintest smile at the corner of his mouth, sharp as a razor. "I warned you," Garrett said slowly, like a drill instructor teaching a new recruit. "That's an identification spray system, used in military data vaults and underground bank reserves. If breached, it marks the target for tracking and authentication. It'll take 5 to 7 days to fade if you wash properly." Halvorsen glared at him, but the fire in his eyes was now wrapped in pure humiliation. "This is assault on a police officer," he shouted, voice cracking with fear. "I'll have you charged with resisting and battery." Garrett shrugged, then casually pulled out his phone. "Then I'm sure this dashcam footage will be very helpful in court." Halvorsen froze. Garrett tapped the screen. A video clip played. Halvorsen's own voice. The threats. The crowbar. The screech of steel. And then, that unmistakable splat of green paint erupting like 4th of July fireworks. Overhead, the drone still hovered silent. Watching. Recording. Then beep. A small chime came from a device held by someone in the distance. Garrett turned. A man in a black jacket was walking down from the ridge. Early 30s. Smart eyes. Calm face. Drone controller in one hand. "Sorry," the man said. "I was testing the Livestream feature on my new drone, but this got too good to shut off." He raised his phone. On the screen, a familiar logo glowing in red and white. Channel 14 News, Georgia Dispatch, live. Halvorsen froze, like a statue dipped in highlighter fluid. "You're streaming this?" "Yep," the man said cheerfully. "Over 2,000 viewers. Comment going wild. Someone just called you the Green Lantern of law enforcement." Garrett turned away to hide a grin. "That's a nickname. That might stick for life, officer." Halvorsen hissed through his teeth, shaking, not from rage, but from the dawning realization that social media doesn't forget what it sees. One bad decision, one misplaced flex of power, and now he was the unwitting star of a nationwide comedy special. With no script, no escape, and no applause. Officer Brent Halvorsen still stood there on the shoulder of the road, like a radioactive mushroom. Neon green paint clung from his forehead to his collar, oozing into every crease of the Raventon Springs PD uniform he once wore with pride. A pickup truck rolled by. A few snickers echoed from inside. A woman leaned out the window with her phone pointed straight at him. Halvorsen barked. "Turn that off. This is a police operation." Garrett Langford, still composed beside his Suburban, shook his head slowly, like a parent watching a child embarrass himself at a school assembly. "Relax, officer. If you're a fan of rules and regulations, I've got something that might help refresh your memory." He opened the rear hatch. No rush. Every motion calm, deliberate, organized like a military field kit. He pulled out a heavy-duty document folder, the kind only military officers or federal staff knew how to arrange with surgical precision. "What is that?" Halvorsen snapped. Green paint now, dripping from his ear like food dye into the wrong cup of coffee. Garrett removed a laminated sheet, edges rounded, seal intact. Across the top, Legal Verification of Security Defense System, United States Department of Homeland Security. The kind of document you don't fake and don't possess unless you legitimately own the gear. This is the official registration for the VaultGuard Series 5 security system, Garrett said evenly, as if briefing a committee. Filed under Form 728F, verified by the Department of Homeland Security. Includes anti-tampering modules, identification spray system, and federal legal clearance for use in non-lethal, non-force defense scenarios. Halvorsen grabbed for it, but his fingers were slick with paint. The laminated sheet slipped from his grip, caught in the breeze, and landed face up on the asphalt, like a court summons from the universe. "I'll have to verify this with my superiors," he stammered, stooping to pick it up while trying to hold onto some semblance of authority, but not quite hiding his shame. "Be my guest," Garrett said calmly. "I have 2 more copies and the registration numbers in the national system." The man behind the drone, Darren Malloy, 32-year-old tech engineer, had now walked up, grinning like he was watching a bonus episode of America's Dumbest Cops. "Did you know this video's trending number 3 on Channel 14 News right now? Over 18,000 people watching live." New comment, every 4 seconds. Someone just dubbed you Neon Cop. Halvorsen said nothing. His mouth opened, then closed again. Garrett took one slow step forward, his gaze unshaken. I served over 3 decades in the U.S. military. I understand the law. I understand honor. And I understand when power is being abused. You picked the wrong man to pull rank on this morning. No one laughed. Even Darren's grin faded, replaced by a rare expression. Respect. And Halvorsen stood frozen. The smell of green paint began to rise in the morning sun. The scent of failure, and the scent of a career cracked wide open by a choice the law couldn't excuse. Halvorsen stood in the middle of the roadside like a broken fairground prop, his face, sleeves, and uniform soaked in neon green paint, and his dignity lower than the mud-caked boots on his feet. Garrett Langford hadn't moved. Each word he'd spoken, calm, firm, final, now echoed inside Halvorsen's mind like the knock of a courtroom gavel. He knew he was wrong, but men like him, whose ego outweighs judgment, don't admit it easily, especially not in front of a black man who'd held his composure from the very start. This was an assault on a police officer. Halvorsen screamed, voice sharp and strained, nearly desperate. You set me up. Garrett lifted his chin, narrowing his eyes. He'd heard that accusation before, many times. It sounded like a loaded weapon, but it was empty. You struck my safe with a crowbar, after I refused, legally. The dashcam captured everything. And if that's not enough, Garrett looked to the sky. The livestream drone overhead is probably recording it all in 4K. Laughter burst from the roadside. Darren Malloy, phone in hand, sat atop his mountain bike, shaking his head like he'd just watched a flawless comedy special. Someone already made a TikTok of it. They added a paint filter on his face. Caption: when you try to break into a general's safe and forget to turn off the live stream. Halvorsen spun toward Darren, enraged. Stop recording. I'll confiscate your device for interfering with police action. Darren calmly lifted his drone remote. Oh no, officer. I'm a civilian. This is public airspace. The video belongs to Channel 14 News. It's insured. It's copyrighted. And, he winked, we've got lawyers. Halvorsen flushed red. But before he could retort, the radio on his shoulder squawked, sharp and cold, like a blade slicing through his delusion. Bravo 3, this is Central. You just been mentioned live on Channel 14. Report your status immediately or stand down and await direct orders from Commander Merrick. The name, Douglas Merrick, hit like a death knell. Halvorsen swallowed hard. That wasn't just a superior. That was the man who'd warned him 3 months ago about abusing authority. If this reached him, along with video proof, Halvorsen's career might be over before lunch. He staggered back, still clinging to the last shreds of pride. You people won't get away with this. There'll be a full report. I'll... Halvorsen. Garrett cut in. Just one word. But it hit like a hammer. Sometimes what ends a career isn't the mistake itself. It's the way you deny it. The word struck directly at Halvorsen's paper-thin pride. His jaw clenched. His green-streaked face now flushed crimson with rage. He said nothing, just turned, yanked open the patrol car door, smearing a long green streak down the handle and across the frame. The car screeched away, kicking up a cloud of red Millstone Valley dust, leaving behind paint, silence, and a live-stream audience still laughing. Garrett exhaled, for the first time, releasing his guarded stance. He looked over to Darren and said quietly, I guess that'll make the evening news. Darren lifted his sunglasses and grinned. If we're lucky, might even get a documentary deal. And just like that, the man with the badge sped off, and the man once doubted remained standing, like a monument to dignity. As Officer Brent Halvorsen's patrol car vanished into a trail of red Georgia dust, Garrett Langford stood at the edge of Highway 62, a road that had become the site of a costly lesson about power abused, about honor preserved, and about justice in the age of live streams. Overhead, the drone still hovered, a silent witness, its lens wide open like an eye that never sleeps. And below it, Darren Malloy, 32-year-old tech engineer, still holding his phone mid-broadcast, walked closer. "Pretty sure I didn't just go out for a drone test this morning," Darren said with a chuckle. "Feels more like I became a field reporter by accident." Garrett glanced at him and gave a quiet nod. Truth needs someone to record it, and justice sometimes only needs a phone at the right moment. Darren flipped the screen toward Garrett. Comments were pouring in like a waterfall. "This guy is legendary. Neon Cop needs a vacation. This is why a camera is the best thing you can carry in America in 2025. Garrett cracked a smile. "I think I just officially became a meme." Darren laughed out loud. "Don't worry. Social media can be brutal, but this time it's on the right side." At that moment, a pearl-white SUV pulled up on the opposite shoulder. A black woman in her early 40s, dressed in light workout gear, stepped out and crossed the road. Her eyes held a mix of worry and admiration. "My name's Camille Everett. I live nearby. I saw the Channel 14 live stream, and I couldn't sit still. I came to be a witness, if needed." Garrett blinked, genuinely surprised. "Thank you, but I think we've got all the evidence we need." "Maybe," Camille nodded. "But there's one thing a camera can't capture. The feeling you get as a citizen when someone wearing the uniform you trusted does the wrong thing." Darren raised his camera slightly. "If you've got something to say to Channel 14, this is a golden opportunity." Camille looked straight into the lens. Her voice steady, her gaze resolute. "I hope the people in power in Ravenham Springs are watching. Because today wasn't just about a safe or green paint. This was about trust. And if law enforcement won't respect the limits of the law, the people will do it for them. With phones, with evidence, and with voices that won't stay silent." For a few long seconds, the world quieted, just the hum of distant engines, and the wind brushing through the maple trees along the road. Garrett turned to Darren. "Guess I better start keeping a few extra copies of my registration in the glove box. And maybe brew some extra coffee," Darren added. "Because I bet good money Channel 14 is calling you." Before lunch, Garrett looked toward the rising sun cresting over Millstone Valley. He didn't need applause. He just needed to know that the truth had been revealed, to the lens and to the conscience. This time, justice didn't come in the form of metal. It came from a phone with a camera already rolling. Officer Brent Halvorsen's patrol car had long disappeared around the bend, but the streak of bright green paint he left behind still shimmered on the asphalt. A crooked, smeared line, like a career that had skidded off the rails. Right there on Highway 62, Garrett Langford stayed a few minutes longer, not to bask in victory, but to make sure it was truly over. No sirens, no shouting, no looming threats, just wind, and the sunrise filtering through the treetops. He turned to Darren Malloy and Camille Everett, his voice low and sincere. "Thank you for being there, for recording it, and for speaking up. Not everyone has the courage to do that, especially when the one standing opposite is wearing a badge." Darren gave a casual wave, like it had all been some tech demo. "No big deal, Mr. Langford. We just did the one thing that really ought to be normal. Keeping each other honest." Camille nodded. Her eyes had softened. "I think you should go now, before the reporters show up." Garrett chuckled lightly. "And before someone offers me a brand deal with VaultGuard safes." Darren burst out laughing. Guaranteed security and viral exposure. Garrett opened the door to his black Chevy Suburban and eased into the driver's seat. Before shutting the door, he looked once more at Darren and Camille. "If anyone asks where all this started, tell them it began with a biased glance and an ego that didn't know when to stop." The engine rumbled gently to life. The SUV rolled forward, passing the still-drying neon, paint now warping into smeared, surreal patterns. In the rearview mirror, Garrett could see Camille standing with arms folded, and Darren waving, the drone still floating behind him like a personal satellite. He made a left at the intersection, leaving the noise behind. The sky was turning golden. But for Garrett, the real light didn't come from the time of day. It came from truth, finally laid bare. By mid-morning, the video titled Neon Cop vs. the Retired General had passed 1 million views on Channel 14 News. Hashtags like hashtag Green Justice, hashtag Painted Cop, and hashtag Garrett was right dominated the trending charts. And in a quiet corner of the Raventon Springs Police Headquarters, Chief Douglas Merrick, age 56, stern and unflinching, watched the clip in full. He didn't say a word, just removed his glasses, placed them on the desk, and pressed the button for the internal line. Tell Halvorsen to report to my office and bring the drafted disciplinary report. As for Garrett, he had driven 5 miles down the road and pulled into a quiet roadside cafe. He ordered his usual black coffee, no sugar. The owner, an older man with silver hair, smiled warmly. Out early today, huh? Garrett didn't look up. He simply stared out the window and said, not going anywhere, just leaving a place where the truth doesn't have to hide anymore. By the next morning, before the sunlight could burn off the last of the valley, mist and millstone, social media erupted like a Category 4 storm. From Facebook to X, formerly Twitter, from local Reddit threads to the Channel 14 morning news, everyone had heard of the Neon Cop. A 6-minute clip of the incident between Garrett Langford and Officer Brent Halvorsen had officially crossed 4 million views in less than 24 hours. And in the middle of all that media wildfire, Garrett was eating breakfast. He sat inside Mama Della's Catfish Kitchen, a small-town favorite in downtown Raventon Springs, famous for cornbread and coffee thick enough to fix a flat tire. Outside the window, his black Suburban sat idle, like a soldier standing guard. He folded the local paper. Front page photo. Halvorsen in his uniform, drenched in green paint. Headline in bold. Emergency suspension. Raventon officer benched after Livestream paint blast scandal. Garrett didn't smile, just took another slow sip of coffee. At 54, he knew anger never lasted. But composure? That's the voice people remember. He pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. After a few rings, a voice answered. Raventon Springs Police Department. This is Officer Carrington speaking. This is Garrett Langford. I'm calling to confirm that my official complaint regarding civil rights violations by Officer Halvorsen has been received. Carrington's tone shifted instantly. Yes, Mr. Langford. It's been filed. And Chief Merrick has personally ordered a high-level internal investigation. Officer Halvorsen has been suspended and his badge has been temporarily revoked. Garrett nodded slightly, his eyes resting on the sunlight sliding across the steering wheel outside. Thank you. I don't need anyone torn down. I just need the system to learn accountability. He ended the call, placed the phone on the table, and went back to his breakfast like nothing had happened. But the truth was, everything had. Elsewhere in town, Officer Brent Halvorsen sat alone in his third-floor apartment, a white towel draped around his shoulders. His phone buzzed nonstop, not with messages from colleagues, but for memes, parodies, and a petition for his firing, already over 100,000 signatures strong. Green paint still clung to the tiles of his bathroom floor. He used to think power came from a badge and a sidearm. But now, he realized, in this era, justice shows up through a lens, through truth, and through men like Garrett Langford, who didn't need to shout to be heard. Because in the end, this wasn't just a story about a bad cop. It was the story of a black man, a veteran, still having to prove his dignity on the very soil he once defended. And he did it, not by yelling, not through revenge, but simply by standing tall.